Tonight, I'd like to open up with a question for consideration. And that question is, do you fear conflict more than you desire inner peace? So, the first thing we have to do is kind of break down those definitions, right? So, do we fear conflict? Oftentimes, when we use the word fear, it tends to represent something that we think is a weakness. Oh, I'm fearful about that. If I'm afraid of spiders, it means I have a weakness around spiders, but that's not really the case. If we're using fear in the context for our conversation tonight, fear is something that is innate for survival. But sometimes fear that we think is helping with survival is actually standing in the way of us moving in the direction that's healthy for our life. So if we're fearing conflict, then that next definition is going to be around the idea of conflict. Conflict means we're not all getting along, right? Conflict is maybe we don't agree and we can't keep our mouths shut about not agreeing. So that leads to continued arguments or kind of heated discussions that create an emotional arousal that's uncomfortable and that we want to avoid. Or conflict can also mean that when we're having conversation with another person, then it feels like they're trying to one up us. So that makes us feel small or weak or threatened in some way. So fear can certainly underlie that because that feels like a threat to survival in some way. So is that fear of conflict or fractured relationship of some sort something that is stronger for you personally than your desire for what I'm calling inner peace? And so I'm going to define inner peace as really just a contentment with yourself. It's not something that's based on external factors. It's not based on how other people are responding to you, but it's just a contentment in your existence and in how you're showing up on a daily basis. So back to that original question then, do you fear conflict more than you desire inner peace? So I'm gonna let that simmer for a little bit. I have a follow-up question, and I think this is where we can open up some of our discussion. Is peace then with other people dependent on how they respond to us? If we talk about conflict being a fracture in the expectation of how we want them to respond to us, then is having peace with other people actually dependent on how they respond to us? Or can we have that contentment regardless of how they respond to us? So I know I didn't give you a very long monologue this evening, but I want to open up conversation at this point, kind of see what's coming to mind for you guys with those concepts of fear of conflict, inner peace or contentment with the self, and the ability to have peaceful relationships with others, no matter how they respond to you. Is there a fear of making a comment?
Hey, I'll talk.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. I think when I'm very present, when I'm just focused on being there in the moment with somebody, I'm not as I'm not I'm paying attention to what I'm doing, what's happening with me, and I'm able to kind of keep my peace. But as soon as I get thinking about them and what they're like, what's going to happen or could happen, then I start having anxiety. And so I think to me, having that contentment is really just being in the moment, being present, and and I can protect it. But as soon as I get outside of that, then I feel like I lose it. So
Yeah, do you think that maybe we can equate that ability of focusing less on what they are thinking about you as a little less ego, or what we would call ego awareness in that moment?
makes sense. Hmm.
So if we quiet that down then it's not so much being reflected back to us. We have our own thoughts in that present moment rather than what are they thinking about us?
Yeah, not worried about that.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you for opening up our conversation. Who else? What other thoughts have come to mind for you guys with that idea?
I have something. It's kind of odd. I have a conflict with a family member, and we both fear conflict. So we just have kind of gone our separate ways. Um, and for the first time in probably about 3 weeks, we got together this afternoon.
Oh,
And she didn't respond in the way I thought she would or should, or hasn't asked me where I've been or anything. And I found it really an interesting thing. And I think we both grew up with a ton of conflict, and neither one of us have the skills to deal with it,
mm,
hurt feelings and things. And it was just an interesting observation. But I've been that's the one thing I've been ruminating over probably the last 3 weeks, trying to let go and go, it's okay. She can do her thing. I'm going to do my thing. I decided to separate myself a little bit for my own inner peace. But I, as I'm microdosing, I want to change, my neuroplasticity. And I've been wondering, this is like a huge area in my life because it's a family member, and not exactly sure where to go with it because I don't want to confront her about anything because she'll either just shut down and leave, or I don't know. Anyway, so that's kind of where I'm at with that. So yeah, my inner contentment is not there right now.
yeah. So yeah, so that original question, just I'm gonna put in the chat was, do you fear conflict more than you desire inner peace? Remember, inner peace is that contentment with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then the follow-up to that was, is peace with other people dependent on their responses to you? So, Nancy, and kind of going back to what you brought up, that's an excellent scenario. Thanks for taking notes and bringing that to the group like you planned it ahead of time for us. But that family relationships are always the closest emotional tie that we have, whether it's positive or negative. There's always something else that's there as soon as we attribute the word family, the role, the definition, the idea of this is family. So therefore, we make more allowances. We try a little harder and whatever that might look like. We overlook some other things. We decide maybe it's us, not them. Or we start to just determine that we should be putting effort into this because they hold a title of a family member, and therefore society says you should or ought to have this type of relationship with a person that has this title.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the stickiest place that we kind of measure some of these responses sometimes, because if they were not a family member, how might that change your inner emotional angst towards trying to bring some sort of resolve to the relationship? And you don't have to answer that. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. It's just kind of for reflection. If this
Mm-hmm.
person wasn't my sister, sister-in-law, mother, daughter, partner, affiliated long-term distance aunt, whatever it might be, then would I still consider this relationship something that needed to be invested in to the point where I'm having personal angst and a loss of self-contentment because of how they're responding to me? This buildup goes into getting together, and then she doesn't respond to you in the way that you thought that she might, which your interpretation then it sounds like was, wow, it sounds like maybe she doesn't actually care.
Yeah.
And so then what does that mean to you? If she doesn't care, I'm just using that, right, as an example. If that's the determination that she doesn't care, then what do I want to do with the relationship? Do I want to continue investing in this? Is this something I should continue putting more and more energy in if I'm not getting anything back out of it? Because every single thing that we do requires energy. Every thought that we have requires a brainwave. Every brainwave requires energy. That's why we can literally just think ourselves exhausted.
Hmm.
We can also call that depression, if we want to put a clinical term on it. The idea or anxiety, depending kind of on what the body, how the body is responding. But that recognition that we put a lot of energy, that if it's going over here, it can't possibly go over here. If I'm putting all this energy into this idea of this relationship over here and what I should or shouldn't do, or ought to, or think I should, or to make me feel better as a human, then, if I'm not doing that, what could I do with all that energy instead? I could definitely turn it toward a relationship that is reciprocal, a an activity that I'm involved in, taking care of my body in a physical way, honoring my mental health in another way, trying something new, expanding my horizons, growing some amazing true albino teacher mushrooms like you showed us earlier. There's lots of other things that we can put that same amount of energy into if we're not investing it into something that just seems to go round and round in circles. And that's why the, underlying idea for my original question of do you fear conflict more than you desire inner peace or contentment with yourself is a question that we have to come back to as individuals and reflect on at times. This idea of conflict becomes something that we work so hard to avoid. And first, conflict can be completely healthy. Conflict is how we work through things. Conflict is how we come to a compromise. Conflict within the self is how we decide, am I going to stay in this one spot or am I going to move forward in my life? So that angst or conflict that we feel physiologically, it comes from what we're thinking about and how we're thinking about it. So resolution then is, how am I going to think differently about this? And that goes to, how do I define this relationship? How do I define what I want out of it? Its value to me, what it means to me. Am I still a worthwhile human being if I don't have a relationship with a certain family member or a certain person? Sometimes it's not a family member, but to use your example.
Hmm.
So those are definitely ways that we start going deeper in some of those ideas. And it's not a devaluing of other people. It is a valuing of the self and where we put those emotional reserves.
It's just getting this person out of my head because I did the physical for me emotionally and mentally separating myself is the better way to go. This has been a pattern since childhood. And um, I've done it before. I just didn't necessarily think that we had to go back to this. But I think for my own mental health, it's best to separate a little bit. But now I just need to figure out how to get her out of my head.
Yeah.
That's the part that I'm struggling with.
Well, and one thing, if this helps at all, that I will say about families is, there's been a lot of course, research and studies around families and family relationships and how those roles that are set within family structures tend to last over time. And for any of you that have siblings or maybe cousins that you grew up with or whatever, you'll notice that when people get back together, even as grown adults, we all act like we're, 10, 12, and 14 again. Everybody just kind of assumes that role because that's what the brain created a reference point to. My place within this family structure with these people is this. I'm the oldest or the middle or the youngest or the quiet one or the loud one or the funny person or whatever. And so we show up with these expectations that are self-imposed, but also expected by other people. And so it can be really challenging to break some of those long-standing ideas within a family structure, even when we feel like, what are we, five? This is silly that we keep doing this, but then we keep doing it until we recognize why it's happening and decide that doesn't have to mean anything about me. If I show up and I'm not the funny one, that's okay because that was really just my mask I was putting on to try and have everybody like me anyway. I was playing the role, which to clarify, that was never my role. Anybody in my family will tell you I am definitely not the funny one. But that those roles are what we tend to default into. And so for you, that idea of really separating yourself from that emotional angst that's still going on of why are we doing this and how do I separate is going to happen by going to those deeper layers of what does this mean to me and redefining that role for yourself of this idea not existing does not define anything about me because that's the safety that the brain holds on to. My identity is in this, the view of myself, my ego in this. And so changing that is uncomfortable. But taking down some of those deeper questions, would I let someone else treat me like this? That's kind of the easiest default. My two top questions for those of you that have worked with me for a while, the first one is what's your fear, right? Defining that fear is always the first one. And then that second one, what does it mean to me? What does it mean about me? If I
Thank
change this role and I change this definition, am I okay with that? Anybody else have wisdom or ideas or things that they want to add to what Nancy's discussing tonight or how it relates to you? Yeah, Tori.
This is such a great topic. And I'm like, I feel like I'm swallowing my heart a little bit because it's like just making me think of a lot of things. And I don't know if I need to like trigger warning or anything, but I did suffer some abuse in my childhood and like early adulthood. And so when you ask this question, like, so for me growing up, like conflict usually meant physical harm.
Mhm.
And so like it's funny because I've been delving into this question as an adult. Like, why am I still afraid to stand up for myself? Why am I still afraid to like speak my mind or disagree or whatnot? And like, I hadn't necessarily associated that it was because even though it was so long ago, and I'm not in that situation anymore, I recognize that like even when there wasn't someone there to like punish me, I would punish myself and either physically or emotionally. And so this is just so profound for me right now because I've been microdosing for a little over a year now. And just about a month ago, I actually confronted my mom about some stuff. And I was very kind about it. Like I've been working doing EMDR and all of that. And I just had an opportunity and I took it and was very respectful about it and just asked her if she was willing to hear about like some of the stuff that I deal with in my body now because of the corporal punishment that was given to me as a child, and she was open to it. And I actually was able to very respectfully like tell her how it affected me now. And like it's been so healing to even because then she apologized and I was like, wow, like I never experienced that before. So I think like two big wins from that are just being able to say anything.
Mhm.
Like, and I was scared too, and I didn't know why I was so scared necessarily. Like I said, I hadn't thought of that like childhood trauma being like connected to that until this conversation. So I'm really grateful for the topic. But then as I was writing down like the note, I wrote down, do I value inner peace? And like, I love that, like, it was kind of a Freudian slip, I think, because I was like, and the fact that you said valuing myself doesn't mean I'm devaluing someone else.
Mhm.
And I think I had that mixed up in my mind, or like somehow there's like not an ending like like
Mhm.
there's a cutoff to that, and there's only a certain amount available, and like if I don't get it, or if I'm not giving it to somebody else, like there's not enough left for me, and that's not the case. It probably works the opposite way.
Mhm.
So yeah, I feel like having that conversation, I never in a million years thought I would have that conversation. And I haven't spoken to most of my family, aside from my mom and my brother, for probably 6 or 7 years. Like the last time it was, they had reached out saying they were praying for me. And I was like, great, for what? And they didn't
Yeah.
respond. So, well, they were like, that you have a revelation of God. And I was like, well, here's the revelations I've had so far spiritually. Like, I'm praying for you too. Much love. Like, there's no way that I would have done that, even a couple of years ago. So maybe there's less fear, but maybe there's also more self-worth.
Yeah. That's
Mhm.
amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. Because one thing that came to my mind in you talking about that opportunity to say something to your mom and then taking it was that you actually had been able to set aside some fear. It was worth it to you to have the conversation, not knowing how she was going to respond. And that was honoring to you. It was, you know what? Again, back to that, can we have peace even regardless of how the other person responds to us? For you come to some recognition and understanding and peace within it for yourself and healing within yourself to be able to say, I'm going to put this out there. I'm going to make a move towards what I'm going to call intimacy with another person, because that's just drawing another person closer to us in a relational aspect. And so I'm going to make a move towards this more intimate relationship with my mom. But if she doesn't accept it, I'm okay with that too.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that is really probably part of what allowed you to show up in that really authentic way and say it gently, and her to recognize, this is a very different conversation that we're having than maybe what we've had in the past.
Hmm.
And I mean, the fact that she did recognize it and apologize for it is incredible. And that shows her response in that intimacy draw from you to also move towards you in that. But you were there already. And that is such a
Great.
great recognition of that peace within yourself. So I'm just from the time I met you, that journey that I've seen you go through in so many aspects, even though we've kind of just crossed paths in very random ways sometimes, has been incredible. So thank you so much for sharing that with the group tonight.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for sending out the email. I've been meaning to like have these on my radar, but realized that I wasn't even on the mailing list. So I took care of that, and I'm really glad. So I'm hoping to do these more, but
Good.
because I think it does help me realize, I think also if I hadn't gotten over my own
Hmm.
victimhood ish in my mind, that like, I had to do some work on that first too. But I think the microdosing has helped a lot.
Yeah,
Like,
it's back to those definitions. You and I talked about that when we
yeah.
crossed paths in Boulder a couple months ago. And it
Yeah.
just that definition of the self, if I only see myself as a diagnosis code or a victim or somebody else's, leftovers or passovers or whatever, then that's how I'm going to treat myself because that is my actual view on myself. But if I set all
Yeah.
that aside and look at myself as an incredible, authentic, amazing being, because that is every single human on this planet, then I can treat myself with that respect and stop trying to get everyone else to respect me and respect myself first and honor myself first. And then that honoring and respecting of others comes from a different place because it is impossible to say I only judge myself. If
Mhm.
you're going to judge, you have to have a reference point. And the reference point is always going to be other people or an idea. And that self-reference place is really challenging because then that's where we start that measuring. And when we can say, you know what, there's not a judgment to hold on to here. I am who I am, and that's how I'm going to show up. And that really sets you free to then let other people be who they are, because it's not coming from a reference place of judgment of the self.
There's more of a lens of compassion, I feel like, too. Like, I think in letting go of my victimhood, like recognizing how maybe some of the stuff that happened was in response to like stuff that had happened to her, and yeah. So to start perpetuating a cycle of healing instead of continuing to, yeah, have the blame and the victimhood like that it's just always been in my
Just
family.
wasted
Yeah.
energy, isn't it?
It is. It really is. Hamster wheel.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
thank you. You're the
Yeah.
best. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Tori. Becky, you were leaning in. Always on the hunt for the mute button.
Okay.
There it is.
Yeah, so when you made the comment, would you allow someone else to do this? It really hit a spot with me. A high school person, a friend of mine from high school that I um, reconnected with after like 20 years, and we fell right back into the same pattern. And it went on for about 10 years. And then one day, I don't know, she had said something to me and I'd hung up and was just like, just deal with it. And all of a sudden I'm like, would you let any of your other friends talk to you that way? Why does she get to? Just because she started doing it when you were young and she's still doing it all these years later. And I realized, and I pretty much ended the friendship after I sat down and really examined it and thought, why am I doing this? It
Right.
doesn't bring me any joy.
Right.
Doesn't bring me any happiness. It just was what I was used to doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that right there sometimes is that internal conflict. If I don't do this anymore, what am I going to do instead?
Mm-hmm.
And that idea of that blank slate is like, oh, well, that's too much. I'll just go with it. It's too hard, to think of something different, or that might hurt their feelings. And then what does that mean? Had somebody recently say they were going to try and exit a relationship gracefully. And like, there will be no grace in
Mm-hmm.
this. This is not going to be a graceful exit, no matter how you try and picture it. There's going to be conflict and chaos and anger and hurt feelings and all of that can come up, but it has to be worth it to go through that, if it's that, or if it's just I'm not returning calls or responding to text messages the same way or whatever. But it still feels weird the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And they call and you hit end and you're like, ooh, wow, that felt bad,
Yeah,
but
and
then good at the same time.
it was interesting because I didn't really just, cut it off. I just kind of stopped. I wouldn't say I ghosted her. I just didn't respond as quickly. I didn't respond as helpful. I'd be like, oh, that really, sorry about that, da 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 da. And then one day I realized she had unfriended me on Facebook. And I went, oh, okay, I guess it's over.
Perfect. Makes
So
it
there
so
was
much
really
easier.
no huge fight. I just stopped letting her walk all over me,
Yes.
basically.
And that is awesome to recognize that and to see that pattern and be able to determine that it can be different, because
Hmm.
that's the other piece that keeps us in the hamster wheel sometimes, is that idea that it's never going to look different, so I just have to go with it. And that kind of goes back to what Nancy had brought up, with family specifically. If we continue to put ourselves in the situation with the same people over and over, it most likely always will look different, because everybody just assumes the role of what's always been there and the interactions that have always been had, until somebody stops it. And, I've years ago read a relationship book that talked about the crazy cycle and how can you go through this, and bear with me for anyone who has differing opinions on relationships. This is the book I was reading, but it was women want to be loved and men want to be respected. And so you get in that cycle of a woman feeling unloved and a man feeling disrespected, and round it goes. And the author posed the question, who actually stops the crazy cycle? And his answer was whoever is most mature. I was like, well, this book is stupid, you know? So, but that's the obvious answer. Whoever doesn't want to keep doing that anymore.
Hmm.
There has to be a choice at some point to stop the cycle with whoever that altering crazy person is with you. And then you can have something different that comes out of it. But it doesn't feel good in the moment. And
Right.
again, a lot of it goes back to measuring that response of what we think the other person is going to do. And, that's why I kind of posed that question tonight of, can you still have inner contentment and inner peace, even if somebody doesn't respond to you the way that you thought they would or should? Doesn't validate that back. So,
Right. And I think, yeah, that depends on the person and the relationship also.
yeah. But
Yeah.
that's a little more energy you have at this point to put towards your relationship with Tom or
Right.
anybody else. So,
Want to go?
thoughts, Tom, before you hit the mute button again?
Uh,
All right, we'll take that as a no for now. Oh,
No, yeah, I'll chime in. Thanks.
okay.
It's good to see you, Charity. And
You too.
um, I just got to say, I mean, your comment or your opening question statements are always just so powerful. Um, and I'm the one that typed in there. Can you please repeat it? Because it's like I have to think about that over and over. Um, and it's like, so does the fear of conflict outweigh the desire for inner peace? Is that
Yep,
close? Okay.
that was it.
Um, I think I've shared in here before that, I mean, fear to me is so made up. I mean, it's something that I have a belief that's that something's going to happen in the future that I don't want to happen. So that's fear to me. It's like, and then I'll like explode that with my make believe mind and all these different ways and angles and stories that this is how it's going to all play out, and I'm creating the future. And and then it becomes even more fearful, or I'll chase answers that are probably also make believe to supersede and bring out an answer that's going to be that I want, that's not going to allow the fear to really set in so much or at all. And all that's like made up because it's not here yet. And so I mean, to me that's what fear is. So but I lean on that because it's like that's what I want to get to my inner peace, is taking care of the fear so I can get to the inner peace. And usually when me taking care of the fear is doing this and doing that and doing this, and then I'll make that, and this person's going to react that way, or if they don't react that way, then second would be they're going to react this way, and then I will do this, and that'll take care of everything, and then we'll all have inner peace with it, because that's going to be the answer. And how draining that is. It's all a make believe land to me with that, and but I don't recognize it, so I have to really work myself to being present, to understanding, okay, how much of my life right now is really made up and how much of it is real, to really weigh in what is conflict really right now and what is inner peace really right now, and how much of it is made up. And I spend way high percentage of the time in makeup land to get things taken care of and so forth. So I chase inner peace through my fear. I don't spend enough time in inner peace that's natural and real unless I'm making it up in taking care of problems, taking care of this, or all my made up stories, to actually allow me to get to a place that, okay, this is going to unfold this way, even though it's got 45 different angles to it, that'll allow me to get to the inner peace. And if one of those little angles in the 45 or whatever it is goes astray, well, I'm in conflict land. I'm in conflict land now. So to be getting able to get to inner peace is only being able to get to what is real for me. And some of that is going through the conflict that is real. So being in reality land and being into the what is actually happening is, I much rather I spend a lot more time in inner peace land, but I don't. I have to be, transparent. I don't. I spend it in make believe land, trying to chase inner peace or causing chaos somewhere that's going to allow somebody else to not have inner peace, and um, you know, and or to have selfish, you know, desires met that won't allow for any just peace. So I would say, like, for me, my comments back are just being real, being in reality, and not in makeup land. If they can then like spin it to how microdosing has helped, I find that getting and only doing where my dosage is correct or even slightly under allows me to have uh, the feeling of inner peace.
Huh.
If I ever do microdose, I can't do that because it gets me into too much make believe land, and unfortunately, I don't know why. That's probably a bigger story, but I do go into like past things that have happened in my life and too much dwelling on it and so forth, and it explodes. If I get to just the right dosage for me when I do microdose, and or just slightly under, that's where I do feel a lot of inner peace. So that's that's an interesting topic, especially for, I think, for this group, is that I have to have the right dose for me. I
Huh.
can't. I know I've heard comments in here before of, I did try macrodosing this weekend, and these are the experiences I've had. I can't do it. I will get too tripped out into longer just things. I will go into negativity land with it. I
Mhm.
can't do it. I have to have the right dosage for me. Charity, whether you want to hear that or not, because I know there's some benefits I've heard from folks that actually do microdose and they've experienced some things. For me, I can't. I have to really, really just make sure that it's, and I don't measure it. I just go in and do, half a tablespoon, and which is, I think, a pretty big dose, but compared to what I've heard in here, but it's or under. And um, that allows me to feel at least like the sensation of inner peace with it, and just not get too caught into, oh, remember when this happened, or remember when that happened, and then I go into that land of guilt or shame and so forth. um I chase answers to conflict, too much with to find the inner peace. um it's a matter of just, gosh, for me to just be real with everything, to not make up stories in my head. I do that too much, whether they have backing behind them or if they have no backing behind them. I will just go with that, and I get into a land that's way in the future, blended with maybe some past to back it, and not actually. And I think you were stating, Charity, of just being my authentic self, of here's what's happening, here's who I am right here and now, and have truth to everything, have a lot of truth, and to really contemplate what is truth. Am I with this? Is what I'm saying right now even truthful? Yeah, I mean, having that real, just real of everything that's real, and that'll navigate me through where I want to go. I think I've been able to do that enough in my life to have a lot of success in one way or another, but I've also not been able to do it enough to have a lot of failures in my life that are hurtful and continue to have pain with, that I have to go and deal with. And it's whether how much of what I'm doing is truthful again, or how much of it am I making up. And so I guess I sound like a crazy person, but I am. I'm a crazy person. I think that I'm real though, because I make a lot of stuff up, and then I have to come back and say, okay, what did I just make up here, and what do I need to actually follow? And for me to have the strength to come in and go in and say, okay, I'm present now. This is what I this is it. This is actual presence. This is real. This is what I'm doing, and not to follow these all these other different paths that I can go down.
Hmm.
Um, that's my challenge,
Hmm.
to find, so does the fear of conflict outweigh the desire to inner peace? Absolutely. For me, absolutely. The fear of conflict, or the fear of having something go away that I don't want it to go, which is fear, right? um that that totally outweighs my desire to have inner peace. But at the same time, my fear of conflict is my way of chasing inner peace rather than going a more healthier, natural route of being able to be present in the inner peace, and wiping all the make believe land away.
Hmm. And
I mean,
so
gosh, that's where I share there with that.
I appreciate that. You put a lot of things out there, as you typically do. That's why I asked if you had anything to say, because I know you do. And it's always
Yeah,
brings
sorry.
another level of discussion to the group. So thank you. The first thing that I think could be helpful is defining that inner peace is not something to be obtained. We cannot catch it. We cannot grasp it. Another phrase like we've used tonight for inner peace is contentment within the self. We don't chase contentment, right? We experience it. And when you are content, you're just noticing one of two things. Either you kind of have this realization of, oh, I'm okay with everything just the way it is right now. That can be a recognition of contentment in the moment, but typically it's not even recognized because you're in it. You don't wake up every day and look in the mirror and go, okay, yep, still a man. Okay, good. I'm a man. I'm going to go about my day acting like a man today. You just are. And contentment or happiness, to use another word, which just muddies the waters even more in the conversation. So that's why I prefer using contentment, because it's not an emotional feeling, it's a state of being. And I think it's, I don't know, one of the weeks in my book, maybe week 2 to 4, somewhere in there, is that the week about contentment. And it says contentment is being able to be okay with everything around you not being okay. And when we think about what that means, what does that really mean? Everything around us not being okay? That means we're not trying to control it. Because what I'm hearing in your definition of inner peace is I feel inner peace when everything is going the way that I want it to go. When my predetermined outcome is happening, then I'm at peace. And I would give you a gold star, except that we all feel the same way. That is kind of everybody wants to feel like, hey, everything's going my way. I'm good with everything right now. But the recognition that most of the time, things do not go the way that we plan them out, whether it be a relationship, a job, a sales quota, a, a car buying experience, whatever we have set out, an educational pursuit, a religious experience, even a macro experience. How many stories do we hear kind of coming through group at different times, people saying, oh, yeah, I did that, but it didn't go the way I thought it was going to? And that's inside your own head. So if we don't get to control even our own macrodose therapeutic mushroom experience, how much less do we control what other people are doing or how they're responding, or, what might happen within the world in any given scenario today? So if we put into a defined box that I experience peace when everything is going the way that I want it to go, we end up having very little of that, because it is a pursuit and a measurement against a very mushy outcome. And I say mushy because it could go 10,000 different ways. And so allowing for life things to go in ways that are not what we expected, but we can still look at it and say, well, that is not what I saw coming, but that's okay. That person's doing this. This is going this way. There are aspects, particularly within a sales environment, is one that's easy to use. In a sales environment, it's here is a number to achieve, or here is an outcome to achieve with accounts, and your revenue, therefore your value, is based on you achieving this outcome. And that's part of why you're very successful in sales, because that works for you. Here's the goal, here's how I get it, here's the KPIs, boom. Except for the mushy part of other human beings in those factors. And that's where, like you're saying, all those stories come into play of, well, what if this person says that, or this person does that, or they don't like this, or what are they going to think about me during a presentation? And that all of that reflects onto the value of the self. And if it's like, you are the cause of me not having inner peace, then that's, again, something that we're putting off onto someone else. They didn't ask for that. They're like, hey, I don't have the ball of inner peace to hand off to you. That's a you thing, which is true for each of us. That's a us thing. That's an individual thing. But that understanding and recognition of that being the pursuit, defining what does contentment look like to me? What does success mean to me? How am I setting these goals? Because guess what? All those goals are things you've defined. All of us have done that because that's how we exist. We're handed definitions from the time we're born. Here's red and blue, black and white, hot and cold, good girl, good boy, bad boy. Here's rejection. Here's love. Here's success. Here's worth. Here's value. Here's rejection. And then we take all those things and we mush them around, and then we're left with this ball of, I don't know who I am or what I think about myself unless it looks like this, and unless the outcome is looking a very defined, specific way.
Yeah. Gosh, I respect all of that, totally. And I'll not take much more time here, but I mean, yes, I mean, does the fear of conflict outweigh the desire of inner peace? For me, for sure, I have, absolutely, for sure. And I'm the one that's blocking that inner conflict.
Well, you
My
are the inner
ego's the one
conflict.
that's blocking the inner peace, excuse me.
Yeah.
And so, gosh, that's so awesome to think of. I mean, I just want to think about that for
Yeah,
a long time. Yeah.
here's the cool thing. The fact that you created it means you get to change it. I
Yeah.
mean, it's also kind of sucky we don't get to blame somebody else, like Tori was talking about. It's much easier to be like, this is your fault. You're the reason I'm not feeling this certain way, or that I am feeling this certain way. But instead, when we just decide for ourselves, how do I want to handle this? Then there's a lot of freedom in that.
Yeah. I'll end it with I feel a lot of inner peace when I can really get into the land of I don't know.
Yep.
I just don't know. And let it flow from there and try to stay in unless there's an answer needed of I don't know. I don't know. And because it's blocking the make believe land of, well, this could happen, that could happen, this could happen, and or this is probably got enough backing to say that this is it, and just saying I don't know, and that brings me to inner peace for myself. So all right, I'm going to shut up now.
Being okay with that. No, thank you. Nicole, you have your hand raised.
I'm kind of like you. So what you were saying was really
Scoot a
resonating.
little bit closer to your microphone, my dear.
You take it off. You can hold on.
Yep.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, much better. Yes, we can.
Okay. So I was just saying, Tom, what he resonated, or what he said really resonated with me. So, um, with the make believe land, you know how he called it. I found that most of my conflicts were created by me. And then as everyone was talking, I was thinking about it, and I'm like, you know what? There can't be a conflict. Like if I let that be a conflict. So if I take my part and myself out of it, then it wouldn't be a conflict. Like it all depends on how I'm looking at it. And I was so this all comes from looking at those definitions. And so if I'm a little bit lighter with how I'm expecting myself to show up, like you said, because the reference point for others is ourself, um, then I don't know where these conflicts went, but they all just kind of went, you know. And I was like, well, like, am I a pushover now or no? It's just I took myself and all those pre-imposed, like 45 different, like Tom said, 45 different things that could possibly happen, and I just slowly but surely noticed that they're like not there anymore, and I have more contentment with whatever situation. And of course, people are going to be people, and or sometimes not the prettiest of things, you know, like we all don't do that. But if I'm not finding a problem with that, so if I challenge the definitions and the expectations I have of others and myself, then it takes that away. And so it's not even it took the conflict away for me to not have these unrealistic expectations of others and myself. Like it just kind of went. And I think with the also the microdosing, someone else mentioned it's like it kind of makes you be a little bit more compassionate towards others. So I can definitely see where I kind of think of like, well, it's not like I'm giving excuses, but just kind of like, well, I've done that before too, or you know, like, so it's just like not having this like set definition of the way things should be. And if I just let it be a little bit like fluid, you know, where it can move and it can change. That's the thing, is it could change at any time, those definitions. So what might be true for me at one time could change, or true for one person could change for another. And so I just wanted to let Tom know that, oh yeah, that I was right there, you know, like with creating all those things myself. So most of my conflicts were because I was allowing it to be a conflict or creating it myself. And then so I was just really thinking, I'm like, well, where did they all go, you know? Because I don't know, like I'm not like a passive person anymore, but boy, was I holding these people, other people, to a standard that they didn't even know, you know. And so it's like, and it was a conflict, and sometimes they didn't even know we were in a conflict, and I'm over here fuming mad and like, you know, and still smiling on the outside. So that's what's really was really confusing. But boy, was I conflicting inside of me. So that that contentness, and oh boy, do I value it now. I really, really do. And so it's almost like I value it so much that I don't let other things become a conflict because I want to be in that peace. And I'm the one that has control over that. So maybe not letting myself get so bothered by things like the smallest little things used to get me and stuff. But the second part of the question, I'm still Lloyd's. Are you telling me to wrap it up, Mister? Oh, he just went like some. But anyways, I was like, oh boy, okay, well, I will wrap it up. But the second part, I think the second part of the question with the how if I'm not getting that reaction, if I can still have that. And I think there's like you said, because the closer they are to us, the more effect, you know, they're going to have. So I'm still like working on that part, but I don't know. It's kind of crazy. So it was well, when you offered the question at first, we're like, oh, she going deep tonight. So, but anyways, that's all I have to say.
Tuesday nights always deep. It's just a group on Tuesday nights that tends to be like, yeah, let's jump in on these things. So thank you, Nicole. I appreciate that. You shared a lot with the group over the past year or two at this point of how you've really moved away from that people pleasing concept, like you've said quite a bit, into being able to accept yourself. And that has been what's allowed you to then, to your point tonight, accept other people and not have those conflicts like you did before, because it really is in our own head, like literally, right? In the default mode network in our head. And yes, I know that there's obviously a lot of discussion in the science world kind of about where does thought originate and where are some of these things held. But if we're going to use just physiology in the brain and where psilocybin is impacting, then however thought connects to that default mode network and that amygdala and is impacted by serotonin and our other hormones and neurotransmitters and everything as a one big physiological being, the brain is just a part of that. It's mechanical. And so, whatever we have learned, how we have learned to process the world is all that we have until we slow it down a little bit and think about learning something differently. And that's the cool thing, though, is because we've learned it, we can choose something different. And I don't like to use the phrase unlearn because we don't want to unlearn things. We want to retain knowledge because then we don't have the same expectations or the same definitions or the same experiences over and over and over. Instead, we have that information and we decide this isn't serving me. This is not getting me to the life I want. This is not getting me to the relationships I want. This is sucking all my energy out. So then I don't have energy for the things that I feel like would really move me forward in my life. So then we get to make a change. But that's that part that brings its own angst because there's a discomfort in being honest with ourselves. And that was a little bit of what I heard you saying too, Tom, was that honesty with the self is where it starts. Each of us has to be honest with what is actually in my head. Why am I doing this? My husband has been someone that's really good at helping me see those things naturally, even when I'm like, no, you're wrong. And then, of course, he's right. But, it's that, well, maybe that's how you see it. Maybe that's a you thing. Maybe that's not really them. And that doesn't feel comfortable initially to hear that. But now it's so much easier for me to do that myself. Even within a relationship, it's all right. I'm feeling like he's not meeting some expectation that I have in my mind. A, does he even know I'm expecting that? Let's just start with that question, because I probably just put it in my own head and never verbalized it. Or B, what do I really want? Is he not meeting this expectation of making me feel a certain way in this particular moment because it's actually on me? Whatever I'm going through is what is creating this emotional angst inside myself, and it's not on him to fix it. And that's just an easy example because it's marriage, it's a relationship. But how often do we do that in other situations too? Customer service, oh man, that's an easy one, right? Any of us can be a Karen, even if you're male or female. You can be a Karen to a customer service person when things are not going the way that you think you want them to. And it's real easy because that person is not somebody you see. They're a voice on the other end who's not meeting your needs and not giving you what you want. But they're also a human who's showing up to a job that they probably really don't like. Because I've yet to meet somebody who loves a customer service phone job and is doing that every day to take care of themselves and their needs and their family. And so, to Tori's point earlier about compassion, that recognition when we dissolve the idea of our own self-importance or let it settle, we are so much more open to seeing other people differently as well and not deciding that everything that they're doing is trying to ruin my life, or make me feel bad or take advantage of me or whatever those inner thought processes and messages might be telling us. So like Willie brought up at the very beginning, that contentment is when we're thinking less about ourselves and just an awareness of how am I responding to people around me. And then Nancy, I appreciate what you offered tonight about really just bringing in a really real world example of family and those close relationships that can be really challenging because we hold a strong definition to them. So, what is your fear? Because I promise you, the fear is something that you have decided. Is there a bear? Or is there a hologram of a bear? Meaning, is it a threat to my actual physical survival? Or is it an idea that threatens my idea of myself? If there's a bear, be fearful. And I was going to say run away, but I don't think that's what you're supposed to do. I think you're supposed to be still. So we'll defer to National Geographic for those answers. But That's that question. Is this a threat to my actual physical survival, or is it something that I have orchestrated and given a lot of power and a lot of idea and focus to that really doesn't need to have all that? And what does it mean to me and about me? Because that's the second layer. That's really where you find where the definition of that fear is. Well, if I let them talk to me like that, then that means I'm weak and anybody can talk to me like that. And like Nicole just brought up, number one, who cares? But number two, it doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean you never stand up for yourself, but it does mean that when that's happening, it doesn't define anything about you. That's a them thing. That's their fear. That's their bear that they're dealing with. It's just coming out against you. So, any other final thoughts for discussion tonight? Anybody that didn't jump in that has something they want to offer? No requirements, just making sure everyone gets a chance to speak if they want to. All right. Well, thank you so much for being in group. I'm going to stop the recording. For those of you listening in on the podcast or through our YouTube channel, we would love to have you join group live and in person. And you can find dates, times, and Zoom links on our website, growyourownthoughts.org.